This is a light field artillery piece of the Napoleon type. And it's a 3-pounder that can lob a 3-pound ball about 800 yards.
So I'd like to welcome you to the 150th anniversary of the beginning of the Civil War. The firing on Fort Sumter was April 12, 1861, and we're commemorating that today. Just by chance, April 9th, 1865 was the date that General Lee surrendered the Army of Northern Virginia to General Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. So we're celebrating kind of the beginning and the end here on this day. Now that Civil War took 4 years to be completed, and during that time 600,000 people died in that war. That's more than all the other wars in the United States combined. And of those 600,000, only about 1/3 died in battle, 2/3 died of disease. So medicine and lack of medicine was a major issue. It was the war and the situation that led up to the war was sorely felt throughout the United States, and that included California. You rarely think about California being involved in the Civil War, but wow, were we ever involved in this Civil War. All kinds of things happened in this area. Some people actually went east to serve for the Union or the Confederacy. So many people went from California to serve in the Union that there was a union in Massachusetts called the 36th Massachusetts, which was called the California Regiment, because so many Californians were in it. People went to serve in the Confederacy. In fact, Captain John Porter, who's on your tour today, left from Santa Rosa, went to the east and served for the Confederacy. There were a lot of other things that happened in this area. In fact, in the book that Gayla Barron and others wrote, she calls Santa Rosa the Confederate frontier during the war. That was because so many people from this area were from Missouri. In fact, at points in that time, this was called the state of Missouri. So there were a lot of Southern sympathizers in this city. And it resulted in several activities that you may not be familiar about that brought the Civil War right here to Santa Rosa. Now, the editor of the Sonoma Democrat in those years was a man named Tommy Thompson. He's buried right up on the hill. And he was from the South and a Southern sympathizer. Whenever the South won a battle, it would be page 1. Whenever the Union won, it would be page 4. So after a while, the people in Petaluma, who were strong Union supporters, they decided they needed to do something about this thing. So in August of 1864, the Emmett Rifles, the militia group of Petaluma, marched on Santa Rosa. They marched up Stony Point Road. They were coming to Santa Rosa to burn the Sonoma Democrat plant and tar and feather Tommy Thompson. And they marched and they marched. It was a hot summer day. They marched along dusty Stony Point Road, and they marched, and they got tighter and tighter and thirstier and thirstier. And after a while, right in the front of them, they saw this thing that could have been a mirage, but it said Washoe House on it and probably said cold beer. So that was the first invasion of Santa Rosa, the only invasion of Santa Rosa, which ended at the Washoe House, which still exists, by the way, for those that have not been there. So in California, there were 56 counties, I believe, at that point. 55 voted for Lincoln, 1 voted for McClellan. Can anybody guess what county in California voted for George McClellan in 1864? Well, you're standing in it. You're standing in it. Tommy Thompson kept up his activities throughout the Civil War until Lincoln was shot. And then he came over to the light side, I guess you'd say, and put a black border around his paper on the date that he announced Lincoln being shot. But in those days, passions were so high that even if you were involved in commerce, people would ask you what your politics were. If you went to buy a basket of peaches, they'd ask what your politics were. And if you were on the wrong side, they might not sell you the peaches, or if they did, the price would be a lot higher. So after the war, the veterans that had gone to the East came home, and then many other young men and women who had been involved in the war, they had seen Richmond, they had seen Atlanta, who's going to go back to little podunk town in Kentucky or Pennsylvania? They headed west, and a lot of them wound up here in Santa Rosa. And this cemetery predates the Civil War. It started in 1854. But as time went by, a lot of those veterans of the Union and Confederacy were buried here. We have about 154 known veterans of the Civil War here at this point, of which about 17 or 18 are Confederates. The rest are Union, including 3 Union nurses. And because of so many Civil War veterans being here in Santa Rosa, an organization was formed called the organization succeeding the Grand Army of the Republic. The Grand Army of the Republic was the veterans organization. And as those gentlemen died out, they replaced it with a group called the Sons of Union Veterans, which you'll hear more about today. So by 1915, a lot of those veterans, 50 years after the end of the Civil War, were dying out and getting old. So in 1915, the city and the Sons of Union Veterans dedicated this monument here to the veterans of the Civil War. And those remaining veterans who were at that point in their 60s or 70s came marching down Franklin Avenue and gathered over here. They had a rifle volley. They had speeches by the mayor, very similar to what we're doing today. And then as time went by, all those veterans died out. The last member of the Grand Army of the Republic in Santa Rosa passed away in 1942. With a benediction given by Chaplain Charles Christians of the Sons of Union Veterans.
We look up to thee for thy protection and blessing amidst the apparent and great dangers with which we are encompassed. Thou hast, in thy wisdom, permitted us to be threatened with the many evils of an unnatural and destructive war. Save us, we beseech thee, from the hands of our enemies. Watch over our fathers and brothers and sons, who, trusting in thy defense and in the righteousness of our cause, have gone forth to the service of their country. Amen. I want to call your attention behind, right here in the shade line, there are 2 ladies seated who are dressed in Victorian black mourning dress. They represent the wives and mothers who mourn for the more than 600,000 boys who served in the Civil War and did not return. In comparison to the current population of the United States now, that would be over 6 million deaths. The Civil War was devastation to so many families that it is almost beyond our comprehension. It is something we might reflect upon here today for doing the rest of the events. Thank you.
And now we have a great privilege of having President Abraham Lincoln, sometimes known as Roger Vincent, here to address us today.
In your hands, my dissatisfied fellow countrymen, and not in mine, is the momentous issue of civil war. The government will not assail you. You can have no conflict without being yourselves the aggressors. You have no oath registered in heaven to destroy the government, while I shall have the most solemn one to preserve, protect, and defend it. I loathe to close. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone, all over this broad land, will yet swell the chorus of the Union when again touched, as surely we will be, by the better angels of our nature. When I came into office, I was faced with the supplying Fort Sumter, North Carolina, with food. And I said I would do that that would be something that was right to do. And I said, well, how do we do this? And so we contacted the governor of the state and said that we were sending a ship down with food, no reinforcements, nothing aggressive. But of course, as you know, on April 12th, the South fired upon Fort Sumter. And after 2 days, they had to be defeated. They were defeated. I called Congress in a special session for July 4th. And this is what I told them. This is essentially a people's contest. On the side of the Union, it is a struggle for maintaining in the world that form and substance of government whose leading object is to elevate the condition of men, all people, to lift the artificial weights off all soldiers' shoulders and to clear the path of the laudable pursuit for all, to affordably an unfettered start and a fair chance in the race of life, yielding to the partial and temporary departures from necessity. This is the leading object of the government for whose existence we contend. You know, I wanted to be the peace president, teaching men that what they cannot take by an election, neither can they take by war, teaching us all the folly of beginning a war. May we have a moment of peace, for that starts within our heart. Nothing can disturb that peace unless we allow it. Thank you.
Hey! Fire! Cover.